I know you both, and you know me. I'm Steve Bosque, the opinion editor at the Sun Sentinel, and with me are Dan Sweeney and Martin Dykman. We'll all share the questions for the next 45 minutes or so and cover as much ground as we can. If there's a question or an issue you feel you need to bring to our attention that wasn't in the questionnaire, wasn't asked by us, by all means, this is the opportunity to do that. Let's begin with you, Alex Arreaza. I want to quote something you said in your questionnaire about yourself and about Judge Haury and get the ball rolling. This might have been the question we ask of all candidates, which is, why are you a better candidate than your opponent? And you said, and I quote, "I can listen to both sides of the story before making a decision better than he could." So tell us more about that, and tell us, is Judge Haury not listening to both sides of the story in his courtroom?
Well, Steve, I appreciate your question, and even though I'm an opponent with Judge Haury, I'm old school, and I don't attack the bench. So when you ask that, when we look at that question, what I'm saying to you is one of the problems starts just from the judiciary in general. The system is broken. Everybody knows it's broken. Part of the problem there is the blue collar people, the working class people, 85% of the people that go before the court, they don't get listened to. You can ask them. They don't feel like they're getting their day in court. Now, my background is much different than his because I come from a blue collar working class family. I belong to the group that's part of that 85%. I identify with them. I understand their problems. I've represented over 10,000 people, over 10,000 cases, all mostly working class people. So I understand their perspective. So, you have a certain perspective, and that's why I think with my perspective, I will listen to both sides of them. I'll take into account that people that come before the court, this is their one shot. The reality is even though the judges will tell you, yeah, you can appeal me, the reality is that a blue collar working class person can't afford an appeal. So that's their one shot. So when you hear things like that in a court and you hear comments, you can see that you're not seeing their point of view. And in order for the system to get fixed, to be repaired, you have to be able to, and I think Judge Haury will agree with me, this will all start with being able to listen to both sides.
Okay.
And to be able to listen and see from their perspective. And that's what I meant with that answer. And I think I have a better perspective because I come from them and I've been doing it for 30 years. And I've been doing it in 5 different areas of law.
Okay. We'll come back to this, but Judge Haury, all I did was quote Mr. Arreaza word for word from his questionnaire, and I would like you to address what he said and also address his comment that he said the system is broken, whether you agree with that.
I actually made a note of that, and I do not agree with it. I disagree with it. I do not believe that the system's broken. I think for the most part, it works relatively well. Certainly, it may not be great, but it's certainly better than anything else that's out there. So I would certainly disagree. With regard to the working class viewpoint, certainly I'm sure that's something that's very true in county court, particularly in small claims. We don't see it quite as much in circuit court, where the claims tend to be of a higher dollar value. So, and to tell you the truth, it's been quite a while since I've been in county court, so I can't really tell you what goes on there these days, although I suspect that most of my colleagues on the county court bench do take the time to listen. They are polite and they are respectful.
Okay, Judge Haury, I know that you went to Boston College. I know you've been on the bench for a while, but just reading between the lines of Mr. Arreaza's opening comments, so were you born into wealth and privilege?
Oh, I wish that were the case.
Well, tell us what was the reality?
The reality of the situation is I've been working since I've been in grade school. I shoveled snow, I cut lawns, between 8th grade and 9th grade, I was actually a counselor for the Boy Scouts Philadelphia Council on Treasure Island. Technically, I was called a counselor, although except for the 2 weeks that I spent on what they called the waterfront, I spent the summer washing dishes in the commissary for the dining hall.
What kind of work did your parents do?
My parents had a hospital and surgical supply house in Philadelphia, and I worked in there in high school, and that's why I didn't go back to camp once I started high school. Between working there and with football camp starting early in the summer, I spent a lot of time there.
Okay.
If you look at my transcript, you'll see that there's a semester missing, and that semester I actually was back in Philadelphia working because of the financial difficulties that my family was having. I don't know if you remember, but that was around the recession of 73, 74. The hospitals were taking 20 to 120 days to pay, and he was basically on 30 to 60 days. So the only good thing about that was it was at the same time that the Flyers went to and won the Stanley Cup.
Okay, we'll come back to that. That's a cursory but illuminating story. Mr. Arreaza, it sounds to me like Judge Haury's part of that 85% too. Do you agree?
No, I don't.
Why not?
Because you didn't listen to the last part. He comes from a wealthy family that owns a hospital that he can, without getting much into that. I don't wanna attack Judge Haury. It's a point that I made, and it's a matter of perspective. And he basically, when you approach this in court, again, the court is really working for the people of Broward County. When Judge Haury, and I disagree with him because it's not, working class people are not only in small claims court. Go to criminal court, go to civil court where he was at. I've represented people, working class people in front of Judge Haury. So I don't really know how you can say that. There's most of 95% of the people that I've represented were blue collar people, and they were just as much on the civil side as they were on the criminal. So I don't really know how you can say that. Okay,
well, let me ask you something else. You've indicated that to us in your questionnaire, there's a lack of diversity on the bench in Broward. I think a lot of people would agree with that, but tell me how voters electing you, how that would improve the diversity on the bench.
That when you asked, when we talked about that question, when I answered it, you can't just go with the diversity, and I really believe in that. Okay, before you do anything, you want to go with qualifications. Okay, you don't want to go with just diversity and you put a person up there that's not qualified, because you are handling people's lives. Okay, but the thing is about diversity is important, because if you can't identify with the different groups, if you come from a background totally isolated from those groups, how could you see their point of view? And I think Judge Haury will agree with me that in order to understand their point of view, you're going to have to put yourself in their shoes. And I think from my background and the things that I've experienced through life, I am in a better place where I know their perspective because I grew up in it.
Where did you grow up?
Well, I originally came from Venezuela, and my mother was basically the breadwinner. My mother raised my brother and I, so between early school and the 10th grade, I probably lived in 10 different cities. We got here from Venezuela to New Jersey, moved to California, moved back to New Jersey, came here, and my mother was always moving because of work. She had to go where the work was, and that starts to really influence the way you look at the world.
What kind of work did your mother do?
My mother originally, when she came from Venezuela, she got a job at the UN. She trained herself as a paralegal. She went to had different jobs in California. When you're talking about the different jobs, I think my poor mom, to put food on the table, had just about every job that you can imagine.
Okay. Judge Haury, is it true that there's too little diversity on the bench in Broward?
I guess it really depends on your point of view.
Well, give us yours.
From my point of view, my own selfish point of view, I would like to have the best person qualified, hearing whatever it is that I have to say, whether that person is black, brown, green, yellow, doesn't really matter. I think the first thing we ought to look at are the qualifications of the person and their preparation and work, and what their skin color or background might be. I think is secondary. Certainly, I certainly don't oppose it, but that certainly would not be my first requirement.
Okay. And you said in your questionnaire that in life you've had to overcome disappointments and setbacks. Give us a couple of examples.
Well, that's part of the reason I went to Boston College was to play Division I football. That did not work out. And if you look at my grades the second semester when I was part of the program, you can see that it was not quite the same as it was the first semester. Probably getting hurt was a blessing in disguise. Subsequent to that, there have been other times where either job opportunities or other things that just didn't quite pan out the way I would hope they would have done. Certainly, it took me 9 times to get appointed to the bench. That started in 2001. I think people would have gone to college and graduated law school before the time I was finally appointed.
Yes, I did see that. What explains, you were there for all those interviews. What explains the inability to move from the JNC to the governor's office?
I think it was part of the governor's office. If you may remember, Governor Bush, I think, was responsible for changing the makeup of the JNC from 3 bar members and 3 members appointed by the governor and those 6 appointed the other 3 to its current composition, where the governor makes up the majority of the picks. The other thing is that Governor Bush was not shy at the time about making it known how he was looking for a certain point of view, almost an ideology, and certainly going with the younger folks. And I think all of that played into it.
You're quite right. And my colleague Martin Dyckman is an expert at this whole aspect of how merit retention and selection and the JNCs have changed over years. Was this, in your opinion, was the system better before, or what is your thinking?
I certainly think it was much better before. I would hope we would go back to that.
Okay. Mr. Arreaza, have you ever sought appointment to the bench through the Judicial Nominating Commission process?
I didn't. When Charlie, I don't know if you remember Charlie Kaplan. He passed away a few years ago.
Okay.
Judge Kaplan.
Yep.
There was a lot of, I've never gotten too far. I think I was applied one time a while back, but I don't think it's any great secret to know that it's a political process, and and sometimes qualifications are not everything that you need to go forward on those things. And I did not have the political clout to have a reasonable chance to be able to be picked. So I chose not to. I mean, I was realistic about it.
Okay. Judge Haury, for some time you've been in the family division, correct? And you still are, am I right?
I've been here since July of 2021.
Okay. And one of the things I've always liked about the legal community in Broward is that it's a very active pipeline of conversation and speculation. You have to take a lot of what you hear with a grain of salt, but it's an accepted sort of feeling, an opinion among all the people I know in the legal community, that if you're in the family law division in the Broward County Courthouse, you've done something to antagonize the chief judge. And so now's the time to talk about that a little bit, because you're a pretty capable lawyer and judge. But why were you in family law, and were you there? If you weren't there by choice, what happened?
Under 2.215, the chief judge pretty much has unlimited discretion with regard to assignments. It's about the only type of leverage that he does have. Certainly doesn't make any more money. What his reasons were with regard to that, I asked the first time I got moved. I didn't get an answer. I didn't bother to ask the second time.
Okay. Mr. Arreaza, have you personally been in Judge Haury's courtroom? Have you litigated a case in front of him?
I have. I've actually litigated in just about all the divisions he's been in criminal, and in civil, and in family also. I don't think I've had anything serious in family. It was something pretty straightforward.
Did you get a satisfactory outcome from him, or do you remember?
Well, we've had our issues.
Well, can you elaborate on that? It might help voters make up their minds in this race.
You know, I'm going to tell you something, Steve, that, you know, when you do these, one thing that the judge and I have in common is that we are both old school, and attacking a judge for a decision that he made. Listen, I may think I could do a better job than him, but what I won't do is second guess a judge. A judge is a referee. You know, if he ruled against me, I'm not going to like it. I want to win every case that I go in front of the judge. But it's kind of, yeah, I've had issues where I disagreed with his rulings, but that doesn't really change anything. I mean, I've had differences with a lot of judges, but the thing is that as to that question, he has to make a call whether I like it or not. So, I mean, I have to accept the decision and move on. That's what makes you a trial lawyer.
You could have run for an open seat. There are 2 or 3 circuit judgeships in Broward County where there's no incumbent running. The field is wide open. It's clear. You chose to run against a sitting judge. Why did you do that?
You know, that's a really interesting question, Steve, and everybody's asking me that question. But you got to go back to, you know, to basically why did I run? You know, when you asked that question in Tallahassee, Judge Haury pointed out to you that I must have been upset because of a ruling case that I lost, and honestly, nothing could be further from the truth. I grew up in a house that says you don't like what's going on, then you step up. Well, I stepped up. I thought that I could do a better job than he could, so I stepped up. But here's the thing, though. What really makes that question is intriguing, okay? The position of judge is an elected position. It's not an anointed one, okay? Broward has somehow turned judgeships into an anointed position that you cannot challenge a judge. And that was never intended. That's something Broward did. And I can't even blame Judge Haury for that, because that rule was around way before he came around. And it's an unfair rule. And it's like, that position belongs to the people of Broward County. The people of Broward County are crying for change. You can't keep the same people in power and expect that change. I'm that change. I come from a background that those people that are at that courthouse are from. So if you can't keep giving them the same thing and think that change is going to come. That's not a realistic goal or expectation. I ran because I am that change, Steve.
What is it? Thank you for saying that. But what is it? I want to just peel back one more layer of this onion. What is it that you would change as a circuit judge that would benefit the backgrounds of these people you're describing in the courthouse?
Let me tell you something. One of the things that probably most difficult thing that when you go up as a lawyer over the years, I watched the judges' interactions with people, and you could just see the disconnect. You don't need to be a lawyer to watch the disconnect. People get treated there's snide remarks. There's remarks that Maybe the judges don't see as disrespectful, but you can tell when the people are in the hallway, they can see the disrespect. And just, you know what, just the way that they're treated. And you know what happens? They leave that courthouse with no confidence in the system. And that's the start of a breakdown. And that's really what I've watched disintegrate over the years, not just in the areas where Judge was talking about in county court. I've watched it in criminal, I've watched it in civil, I've watched it in family. And the reality is the public does not have confidence in the system. You ask 8 out of 10 people and they won't tell you that the system is fine. And I agree with them. You know, I'm from Venezuela. This system is 20 times better than Venezuela, but we're here. We're here. We should not be satisfied with doing a mediocre job. Okay.
Okay. And tell me this, I think you said earlier in this discussion, you've been practicing law in Broward County for about 30 years.
Correct.
Was this situation with eight people out of 10 leaving the courthouse disgruntled and no confidence in the system? Was that the way it was when you started practicing law? Has it always been like this?
It's gotten worse. It's gotten worse. It's gotten worse. And I remember in Broward when I first started practicing, and you know this, Steve, there was a group of people and they were called the kingmakers, the judge makers. There was no challenging a judge. What you see me doing today was just, you couldn't be more taboo.
Yeah, I understand. Well, let me just switch to Judge Haury for a second, and I want to bring my colleagues in here for the questioning in a minute. But Judge, what Mr. Arreaza describes as a system where people leave the courthouse in disgust with no confidence in the system, is that the system you see every day?
Certainly not the system I see. Certainly, I think the civil bench as overall probably has never been stronger.
And what makes you say that?
With regard to the people that are currently serving overall, I think for the most part, everybody, prepares, is on time, is courteous, and does what they're supposed to do when they do it. We can certainly go back, 20 or 30 years ago where you had certain judges walking down the hallway at 9:15 in the morning for their 8:45 hearings, bragging about how they were the highest paid person in the building because they worked the least amount of time.
Huh. And that's not the system anymore, you're saying?
It's certainly not what I'm seeing.
Is the Broward County Courthouse empty on Friday afternoons?
I guess it really depends where you go. It can be quiet. There's no doubt about that.
Okay. I'm going to open the floor to my colleagues, Martin and Dan. Go ahead, Martin.
Yeah. Go ahead, Martin.
No, Dan, go ahead.
Okay.
What?
Go ahead. Sorry.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
All right. Judge Haury said that, in his experience as a judge, everybody's courteous. Mr. Arreaza, you said that there's snide comments that maybe the judges make that they don't think are disrespectful, but your clients see them as. Can you just, you don't have to, give me a judge or anything, but if you can just cite a specific example of things said among these ostensibly courteous judges, according to Judge Haury, that your clients would find disrespectful. What exactly are you talking about?
Well, we have this system of Zoom now, right? When we had it right after during COVID, we have a hearing at 4:00 and we're trying to get in there at 4:00 and 4:01, the judge knocks us off the calendar. We weren't there at 4:01. Something happened with the computer and my client's asking me, what, I mean, I don't deserve a little leeway here?
I heard the answer. Sorry to interject, Dan, but are you talking about Judge Haury or another judge?
Steve, I mean, like I said, I'm old school. Even though I'm his opponent, I respect the position. I don't want to attack Judge Haury.
Okay, well, Judge Haury, did you knock somebody off a Zoom call at 4:01?
I can assure you that that was not me.
Well,
I think Zoom's been great. I'm astounded at how well it's worked out. I do not have a waiting room for my hearings. I believe that Zoom hearings like the courthouse should be open to the public. I had a hearing, 10 o'clock hearing this morning. We waited until 10:15 for the person to show up before we went offline. So I'm not sure, what the 401 comment is in reference to.
Go ahead, Martin.
One more question.
Sure.
I'll be quiet. Mr. Arreaza, you've loaned your campaign $7,000, which just about covers the filing fee. According to Division of Elections, you have not loaned or raised another dollar since then, making your campaign essentially, practically a $0 campaign. Is this a serious campaign? Can you win a campaign against a sitting judge having raised essentially no money at all?
Mr. Sweeney, I assure you that I take my profession and this position with every seriousness. I don't make any move like this that is not a serious move. Whatever money I need, I will give to myself. I will loan it to myself. Obviously, when you ask that question, you need to understand that I'm running against a sitting judge. Okay, and that comes with problems. That's going to make it more difficult raising funds. So I have to provide all that money myself, or most of it myself. So because you're not seeing that account with all the money right now, doesn't mean that I'm not serious. I can assure you I'm dead serious.
Okay, thank you.
Judge Haury, we all know about how quickly and how much the demographics can shift in Broward County. I've been watching it for more than 40 years myself. And in the 2020 census, for example, from 2010 to 2020, there was an astronomical increase in the number of Hispanics in Broward County. You're running in a nonpartisan county-wide election. Can you tell us anything you're doing specifically to reach and to relate to Hispanic voters?
Right now, still haven't got to that point. We're still going through the fundraising and the endorsement part of it. I suspect the mailers and the other methods to reach those folks are coming up. I was fortunate and very thankful to get the Hispanic vote endorsement approximately 2 weeks ago. I just received the FOP District 5 endorsement, and I'm hopeful to get others. With regard to specifics, with regard to the Hispanic population, this is all a brand new situation for me. I've never been in this position before. I'm kind of relying on the professionals around me with regard to that.
Okay. Who is your, if you have one, who is your professional or paid campaign consultant?
Judy Stern.
Oh, okay. Yep. All right. Have you loaned your campaign your own money?
I have not. I don't believe in it.
Why not?
I think if you're going to run, you should pay your own filing fee. You shouldn't put money into the campaign with the idea that you're going to spend somebody else's money and pay yourself back at the end.
And I'm not sure I understand. Do you mean that you should not loan yourself money, or you should only use your own money?
Well, the question was, if I remember the question correctly,
Sure.
was whether I loaned myself money, which I did not, and nor do I intend to. Any money that I put in, I do not intend to get back.
But I guess maybe I didn't ask the question as sharply as I should have. Are you actively raising campaign contributions to fund your campaign?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I think you'll see with the next reporting period that we've almost doubled.
I want to ask you a question I would ask any candidate in your situation, but like you said, this is a brand new situation to you. as a judge, you know a lot of the lawyers in Broward County. And would you say to yourself, gee whiz, Judge, attorney so-and-so, John Doe on Las Olas Boulevard, I can't ask this guy for money. This guy appears in front of me regularly. It wouldn't look right. How do you handle situations where of a lawyer who regularly appears before you?
Well, I think Canon 7 has already handled it for me. I'm just not permitted to do it, period.
Okay. Mr. Arreaza, why is Hispanic Vote supporting Mr. Haury and not you?
Well, I mean, I guess you'd have to ask them. They interviewed both of us.
Okay, we will ask them. Go ahead, Martin Dykeman.
Mr. Arreaza, listening to you, I gather you're presenting yourself as a change agent, but you're running against a specific incumbent judge. And you don't seem to want to say what he has done wrong that you would do better.
Well, Mr. Dykeman, I have, and I said it. We come from different perspectives. He, my working class background is completely different than his. I come from the people that come before the court. I understand their perspective. I treat them with dignity. I treat them with respect. And I don't always agree with the way that he treats people in his courtroom. And I've watched it, and I mean, you like I said, I try to temper my answer with giving the judge a certain amount of respect that I've trained myself to do over 30 years. But the perspective is a big difference. When people come before the court, you need to be able to see things from their perspective. Now, not to give them sly remarks and tell them, you don't even, when they want to be heard and it's their day in court, when you're telling them that whether, you don't like the opinion, they can appeal. Well, you know what? Most people can't appeal because they don't have the money to do it. Most people in criminal court can't afford lawyers because they got public defenders. So it's that disconnect that I think that I could change. I've been in the system. I know how it works. I need what it needs to be done. Now, Mr. Dykeman, the thing is you got the judges doing the same thing over 20, 30 years. How, it's not, you guys are in the newspaper. The people of Broward County are crying for change. You can't keep putting the same kind of judge. And even the judge just told you, he doesn't think there's anything wrong with the way things are. When my clients are telling me, my clients get upset, but the judge tells you, no, there's nothing wrong with the way things are going. If you're going to have change, because that seat belongs to the people, that's not an anointed position. Okay, that belongs to the people of Broward County. Now, in order for there to be change, you got to change the people in power. It's a simple formula. If you're going to keep the same people in power, change is just talk. Okay, and like Mr. Sweeney asked me, am I serious? I'm prepared to give up my practice of 30 years. That's how serious I am. Now, I'm prepared to put in my own money that I've worked for. That's how serious I am. Now, if he doesn't think putting in his own money is not a commitment he wants to make, that's him. I'm prepared to make whatever commitment I need to make to be able to win.
I heard him say that he is putting his own money into the race. He's just not putting it in as a loan, which would enable him to pay it back at the end of the campaign. Now, am I misstating what we heard from him?
If that's what it was, then I misunderstood what he said. He said he didn't believe in putting in his money. That's what I heard.
Not what I heard him say.
Well, I mean, we're on the same thing. I just heard him say that he didn't believe in putting in his own money. If I misunderstood, then I'm sorry.
Judge Haury, why don't you briefly clarify that point?
I do not believe in my campaign money with the idea of getting that money back again. I put the money in straight forward as a contribution, not as a loan. And incidentally, when I've been on election cycles in 2010, 2016, 2010, I did raise money, and every single cent that I raised, I returned. I paid my own filing fee. I was fortunate in 2016. I did not raise any money, just paid my own filing fee. That was it. I thought the same thing was going to happen this time. Obviously, that was a mistake.
What was a mistake?
Not raising any money in advance.
I see. Okay, yeah. You didn't anticipate a challenge, right?
I did not. It was quite a surprise.
Okay. Mr. Arreaza, I do want to briefly cover something that's in the public record, and that is your admonishment by the Florida Supreme Court for oversights or something in discovery with a prior client. Can you tell us about that?
You know, Steve, I saw when you wrote that in the newspaper, and I'm going to answer it this way because, you know, in this process, I'm not going to tell you that I will not claim to have been a perfect lawyer. I will not claim that I didn't make my mistakes. I don't think Judge Haury is going to claim that he was perfect. Okay, so I mean, I answer it that way. You read what he did. You know, when you look back at some of his rulings, you can ask the same thing, but you didn't. You wrote down in the paper an admonishment that I got, and it is what happened. I addressed it with the bar. I'm not a perfect lawyer, and they ruled the way that they ruled. Now, you know, when I noticed in the same article, there was issues about his prior rulings that you never even touched. And I was kind of curious why that attack was on me, but not on him.
Well, it wasn't intended as an attack. It's a matter of public record, but now's the time to help us set the record straight. What about his prior rulings did we overlook?
I mean, it's in your, right? If you look, you don't even need to look in public record, look in your own newspaper. Now, there was rulings with the recusals, the individual that wanted to, I guess it probably hit home more because I was involved in the Parkland shooting. We were trying to keep the dangerous individuals from there. And there was a ruling on, I believe that there was a ruling where there was a young man that the families didn't want back in the school that was charged with rape, and Judge Haury let him back in. Now, I'm not going to second guess him because that's how much I know about it, but you never questioned him about that. But you're bringing out the fact that I got admonished 10 years ago. And I'm not perfect, and I don't claim to be.
Okay, well, let me ask Judge Haury a couple of questions. First of all, Judge Haury, we may have overlooked it. Have you been admonished by the Florida Supreme Court?
I have not.
That's not what I meant, Steve.
Oh, okay. Well, let me ask you about this other point that Mr. Arreaza brought up, which is, and I have not done the research, but we will. The case he's describing that relates to the Parkland case. What?
There was an individual charged with rape. He wanted to go back to his school. The people did not want him to go back to school. Judge ruled in a manner where they had to let him back in the school, pending his case. I said, you never questioned him about that, but you brought up the fact that I got admonished 10 years ago.
Okay. Judge Haury, do you know the case that Mr. Arreaza is describing?
I suspect I have an idea of the case that he's referring to. And to tell you the truth, I'm not sure if it was when I was in a regular criminal division or whether if it was back in when I was still doing mental health. So I'm just not sure. I certainly don't have the case number or the defendant's name. If Mr. Arreaza could help us out with that, that would be helpful. My recollection of that situation is that I had a person who was still in high school charged with assaulting, I believe it was a homeless woman, on a bus stop. I think he was claiming consensual sex, and the prosecutor that was assigned to the case was not there when the case was called. We waited, and after a period of time, I addressed the case. I listened to the defense, and I believe that I put the defendant on some type of a conditional release program. And I did not hear anything subsequent to that, so I'm assuming that there were no further issues.
In your newspaper, the gentleman was charged with a sexual related crime. He went, the school parents tried to keep him out of that school. And the judge ruled that he would be allowed to go back to that school, even though he was charged with it. That's the one that I was pointing out to. And you asked me about other ones. What about the recusals, where he refused to recuse himself?
Okay,
The point that I made, and it's not an attack on the judge. The point is that I kind of saw it. He came at me, but you, in your own newspaper, you have plenty of things where he's been attacked, and you didn't point any of that out. And that's kind of that. When I say about change, that's kind of, I knew that when I challenged the sitting judge of the taboo of running against the sitting judge, things were coming in that direction. So I mean, I never got a chance to. I wanted to ask you that, but like you answered. You said you didn't know anything about it.
okay. Let's move on here. I wanted Mr. Arreaza one more time to I'm just looking at my notes from this discussion this afternoon. You talked about the different perspectives that you and Judge Haury have. The fact that so many people don't have any money to appeal, that people in Broward County are crying for change. And I wanted to just one more time try to sort of ask you to hone in on how you are going to effectuate this change if you win this election and Judge Haury loses. What's going to change in that courthouse?
It's the changes that courthouse needs, I would call, they're just simple change. When people come before the court, it's not just the judge's friends that deserve respect and patience and dignity. It's everybody. It's everybody. So when you come, you start right away by listening to both people. No sly remarks, no remarks where these individuals are going to lose confidence in the court system. And this is, while to a lay person these things seem simple and that they're not that big a deal, they make all the difference in the world, because the people at that courthouse forget that courthouse belongs to the people of Broward County, not the people that are in power at the courthouse. And the moment that they're in power, yeah, they can do whatever they want and people have to live with it. But they move on with it, and it's not for what they feel or what they think at the moment, or exercising their power. Just treating them with simple dignity and respect when they come before them is something that is still not being done at that courthouse. And I won't say 80%, but you still see the sly remarks. You still see the not respecting the arguments between the bench and the litigants. I can tell you, I've experienced the sly remarks and and disrespect and the, you know, and you know what? A judge, after a while, may think in their heart that they're not being disrespectful, but they have the power. The lawyer's not going to tell them that because the lawyer wants a ruling in their favor. So you know what? You know, I got to the point, and I just go back to what Mr. Sweeney said. I am serious about, I would give up my practice. I would put in whatever I needed to commit to this, to winning the race, because I think the courthouse needs that change. Like I said, it belongs to the people of Broward County, not the judiciary.
Mr. Arreaza, I asked Judge Haury a few minutes ago if he had a professional paid campaign consultant, and he answered the question. Do you have one as well?
I do. Barbara
Who-
Miller.
Barbara Miller. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think it's only fair that you've spoken for several minutes, and I want to give Judge Haury an opportunity to respond to anything he's just heard from his opponent.
Well, I certainly appreciate all your time and taking this afternoon and making an effort to educate the voters with regard to what their choices are in August. Unfortunately, we have maybe 9,000 lawyers in the county, and outside of a couple hundred that appear in the courthouse on a regular basis, I think most of the lawyers really don't have an idea in terms of who is really doing what at the courthouse. So I certainly appreciate that time. With regard to any specific comments, unless you have something in particular you'd like me to address, I don't really have anything further to say.
I do want to ask about, and Mr. Arreaza did not mention you by name, so I don't have no reason to think he was referring to you, but several times Mr. Arreaza has described a courthouse environment where judges make snide remarks, sly remarks, I believe he said, about litigants, about people in the courthouse. And I want to ask you, do you know what he's talking about? Have you seen this with your own eyes?
I certainly haven't seen it in the courtroom. You know, we may talk amongst ourselves out of the courtroom with regard to what may have happened in the courtroom, just the way any other coworker might talk. But in terms of actually being disrespectful or demeaning in the courtroom, I can't say that I've seen that.
Okay. Just checking. Any last questions by my colleagues Dan Sweeney and Martin Dykeman? No. Okay. Gentlemen, thanks a lot for the time this afternoon, both of you, Mr. Arreaza, Judge Haury, appreciate it.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it.
Best of luck to you both. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Have a good afternoon.